and it provides a commitment to continue our operations so as to not adversely affect the historic flow regime that results from the operation of the Shoshone Power Plant in Glenwood Canyon. Third, we have taken responsibility for our impacts of our operations on the West Slope. The proposed agreement provides commitments for funding for projects for the environment, for water supply and wastewater treatment on the West Slope. It provides commitments for Denver Water to provide water for the environment and water supply for towns and ski areas. And it provides a commitment to constantly work with West Slope entities and the environmental community and the Division of Wildlife to identify and address environmental issues from the operation of our system. Fourth, the proposed agreement supports our activity to move forward with the permitting of the enlargement of Gross Reservoir in the Moffett Firming Project. Finally, the proposed agreement supports the cooperative plan by Denver Water in the South Metro area to reuse our West Slope supplies for a sustainable supply of water to South Metro. I want to emphasize that more work needs to be done toward the implementation of this agreement. We have a commitment to be working with our partners, the state of Colorado and the Federal Bureau of Reclamation, to implement the provisions of this agreement. It's extremely complex and far-reaching, as you know, but we're committed to getting there, and we believe that through the public processes that will need to be undertaken through the various entities that need to sign this agreement, that the benefits of this agreement to both East Slope and West Slope will be apparent. With that, I would like to introduce Governor Hickenlooper. As you know, the governor was formerly the mayor of Denver, and as such, he appointed a board of water commissioners. And he didn't just take that as a perfunctory task on his part. He interviewed potential candidates for commissioners, and he had a vision for water use and development in Denver and the way that Denver would do business in the metropolitan area. He was part of the foundation of the negotiations that led to this agreement. In fact, it was then Mayor Hickenlooper that suggested the East Slope and West Slope look to a mediator to resolve our differences. And the mediator, John Bickerman, is here. He has sustained mutual brain damage with all of the rest of the parties through this process. John has done mediations throughout the U.S. and I believe throughout the world, and he's characterized this mediation as far and away the most difficult, complex, and confounding mediation in which he's been involved. And so, John, thank you for your efforts in bringing us to this point. Governor Hickenlooper, when he was mayor, also pushed metropolitan-wide cooperation on a number of different fronts. And certainly, as I've discussed, Denver Water is a partner with the Denver Front Range and the Western Slope toward creating a better future for Colorado as a whole. And finally, the governor has clearly articulated a collaborative water development vision for the state of Colorado. We strongly believe that this agreement fits within and furthers the vision that he's articulated. And so with that, I'll introduce Governor Hickenlooper.
Well, thank you for the kind introduction, and certainly thank you to everyone up here, everyone out there who's labored mightily over the past several years to get us to this point. I spoke to a group of trial lawyers a couple days ago, and we uncovered this wonderful Lincoln quote that I think applies equally well to water lawyers. Lincoln said, "Discourage litigation. Persuade your neighbors to compromise whenever you can. As a peacemaker, the lawyer has superior opportunity of being a good man. There will still be business enough." This is a day that I think a lot of us thought would take place far in the future, at least a couple years in the future. And I remember those early discussions with as we did those first board appointments. And again, I came into being a mayor having run a bunch of restaurants. So I had an intimate connection with the importance of water in terms of making beer, and how careful, and the value of that water, and how to be more efficient with it. But when you began running for mayor and realized just how important Denver water was to the city and to the entire state, it was from the beginning one of our highest priorities. I remember vividly sitting down with my first chief of staff, Michael Bennett, who's now our U.S. Senator, and sitting down with Chip Sparry, and Chip's, who died almost exactly a year ago to this day. He died on May 2nd of 2010. And we had that first discussion. We spent 3 hours talking together. It was after work one day. And Chip's, we didn't always agree on everything and the pace, and certainly he moved me in many ways. I think Michael and I moved him in a number of ways. But he had an ability to bring people together and a wit. He, to this day, gave the single best introduction I've ever had in my life. Somewhere we preserved it. And I think in a funny way, he's with us in this room. I remember when we first appointed Tom Goujon to the board, and George Beersley, who I don't see here today, but the whole group and the people that Jim just mentioned, all the board members, Greg Austin and Paula Herzmark, and I see Penn Tate and John Lucero. When we interviewed them, the one thing we said again and again was, this isn't going to be an easy position to do, right? This is going to take a great deal of time. You're going to have to travel across the state that you're either in or you're not going to get appointed. And to their credit, every one of them leaned in and said, all right, whatever it takes. We realize how important this is. The proposed agreement, and obviously there's still work to be done, but it really does demonstrate that collaboration works, and the collaboration can move mountains and move water lawyers. And then ultimately, whether you're looking at it from an Eastern Plains perspective, or from a West Slope perspective, or from a resident of the metro area, that we're all focused on doing what's best for Colorado, right? That we are intimately interconnected in a way that demands this type of approach. And I think the part that's especially invigorating to me is that if we can make this agreement work and take it from where it is now and move it forward, it really does demonstrate that in all of our basins that there is great potential, and that the approach that Denver Water has done towards conservation and really changing the attitude of people, well past the drought, to say, all right, how can you still maintain your life, but your quality of life, but you don't need quite so much bluegrass? How can you still get what you need and yet recognize that water is more precious all across the state, has greater value, and make sure that you keep that attitude throughout the citizenry. I'm so grateful. On the backside there is John Stolp, who is not our water czar. I keep telling people that we have in John Salazar, Commissioner of Agriculture. He's the only czar we have, is a Salazar. But John Stolp, I think, and this agreement is a perfect foundation, has the tools and I think the personality and the experience to expand the collaborative attitude that we see here, and continue this progress, so that we in the next 5 or 6 years are able to have a statewide vision of how, whether you're on the West Slope or the Eastern Plains or one of the urban areas along the Front Range, you can see down the road 50 years and not feel absolutely threatened. When Chips and I had those discussions, and I love playing squash. It's a kind of a silly game, the skinny racket, that I shared a passion with Chips. Chips was also a great squash player, and he had just had his motorcycle accident, I guess a couple years before I got elected. But he was back to playing squash. So we would play squash and sit there sweaty and half naked and argue over water issues, which to this day, I certainly have been the most interesting discussions, both contextually and policy-wise, programmatically, that I've ever had. I also want to give real kudos to all the negotiators, but especially Eric Kuhn and the Colorado River District, with all the other entities involved in in this agreement. That notion that we will seek compromise for the benefit of all was supreme, and I think the state was also well served by our state engineer, Dick Wolf, and our division engineer, Alan Martello. That's Martellaro, I'll get that right. That's close enough. Martellaro. With a name like Hickenlooper, you can, mess up anybody's name. People don't get too upset. Anyway, this is a historic agreement in every sense of the word. It allows us to, again, set a model for how we can have these kinds of discussions without pitting one part of the state against another. And I think that it creates a responsible path for, figuring out where additional water comes from. At the same time, we really push for reuse. We push for conservation. Ultimately, I think as more people hear about this and really understand the significance of it, the Coloradans will applaud the compromises that we're taking. Again, sort of like working on the state budget. No one's going to be perfectly happy. No one gets everything that they want, but you end up with an agreement that has lasting significance. So this ongoing role that we have now, in terms of implementation, the state will have a role in this to make sure that we propose and review creative and innovative mechanisms to make sure that we have a lawful and appropriate implementation of the important portions of this agreement. And we will make sure that we instruct all of the state workforce that this is a highest priority. We push this forward. We want to make sure that we prove Lincoln was right, that we can beat our swords into plowshares, our spears into pruning hooks, and our lawyers into peacemakers. Anyway, I'll stop. Let me introduce now James Newberry, Grand County Commissioner. He is certainly a water leader in Grand County, serves on the management committee of the Upper Colorado River Project, is the Grand County representative on the Colorado River District. He is the chairman of the Northwest Colorado Council of Governments Water Quality and Quantity Committee, and sits on the East Grand Water Quality Board. So please give a warm welcome to Commissioner Newberry.
Thank you very much, Governor. This is truly a historic day for Grand County, and we appreciate all of you being here. When I say we, on behalf of Commissioner Gary Bumgardner and Commissioner Nan Stewart, thank you for your patience. This has been a negotiation that has been confidential, and we've really asked your patience, and you gave it to us. We have been wanting to get this agreement proposal out so that you can see it. The people of Grand County can see it, review it, understand it, and see all the hard work that's been put into this thing over the past 5 years. I too would like to thank a couple of the Denver Water Board members, especially, and Tom Gajan and Penfield Tate. I know all of you have been involved, but those two seem to have been, and John was there for quite a bit of the time, but they were from start to finish on this thing. I say finish on the proposal. We still have a lot of work to do. But outstanding job of leadership and making sure that we were always the communication was there and we were working together. When we started this project, there were a lot of people who told us, "What are you guys thinking? Going down to Denver Water and talking about a compromise, how to work on water, how to deal with these things." So the only way you get anything, time and time again we heard this, the only thing you get anything out of Denver Water is sue them. And we said,